Dave Eggar is a visionary cellist with extraordinary talent and boundary-pushing approach to music that's made him stand out in the world of classical and contemporary music. He's renowned for his dynamic performances and unparalleled technical skill. You're blushing over there. Dave blends the rich, resonant sounds of the cello with elements of rock, pop, and electronic music, creating a captivating and unique listener experience. With an impressive career spanning over 2 decades, Dave Eggar has performed with legendary artists, contributed to movie soundtracks, toured globally, and has left audiences mesmerized with his emotional depth and versatility. Dave Eggar, thank you for joining me here on this exclusive interview. It's great to have you. And you're in Pittsburgh, you said, huh?
Yeah, I'm in Pittsburgh right now, working with a dance company, Attack Theater, that I've worked with for many years, actually since college, and the Cuban band Mama Fuma from Miami. So it's a really fun show that fuses like pop music, Cuban music, and kind of a really cool dance narrative. And then I'm back in New York and in Tennessee. I'm kind of a little bit in both. I got to work last week, which is like, you'll probably love this, or maybe you won't. I don't know how you feel about this project. But one thing that's very exciting for me is working on the new Mobb Deep record as an arranger.
Yeah.
So I got to hang out with Havoc last week, and that's
cool.
A project that means a lot to me. So, well, it's such a cool thing when you kind of get to have your heroes like there in the room, and it's so terrifying. Like, on the one hand, I had this really old cello, it's like from a couple 100 years ago, and I was like, I wanted to share it with them, but I was nervous, and I'm like, oh my god. And then immediately they were like, we need to do an intro, like go in and do this intro, and I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. I was listening to this stuff like when I was sort of coming up in Juilliard and stuff, and so that's a project that's really exciting to be working on right now.
Yeah.
And I'm back working with the band Foreigner also, which is going to be fun. Be some touring next year.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about that. And it's probably harder doing an interview with a guy like you. You and I've known each other for nearly 20 years. So I feel like, we just jump into these conversations. But I want the audience to know about you, that you were considered a musical prodigy as a child. You began to play the cello and the piano at age 3 and performed and sang on Broadway at the Metropolitan Opera at age 7. You were a tiny kid doing these big things. You were trained classically at the Juilliard School of Music and graduated from Harvard University and Juilliard School doctoral program. Those are really big things for a young guy. How did you find the cello to be your instrument of choice?
Yeah, no, there's a sort of a funny story and then a sort of a bittersweet story. The funny story is that part of my family was musical, and it was like it was a part that was in the military, but sort of were higher level amateur musicians. So they really kind of were. There's a lot of music that was around all the time. And my grandfather was a violinist. He was in the Navy, but he played violin, like, I guess, pretty seriously. And so everybody wanted me to play violin. So they started me out on violin, and I might have been like 4 at the time, really young. And there's this string education program called Suzuki. Suzuki is kind of like, it was invented by this really brilliant Japanese violinist in maybe the 1960s, and it involves sort of kinesthetics. And there's all this kind of marching and other things you do, and you play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star a lot of ways. Well, I was a pretty precocious little kid, and I thought it was kind of dumb, which I don't think it's kind of dumb now, and I actually use it as a teaching method. So, Jay, I smashed my violin.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. And,
you were like, not for me.
I was very metal. I was like, this is not, it's like, it was like Rammstein or something. I was like, boom, I'm not playing this. So for the holidays that year, I got a cello, and my dad looked me in the eye and he said, it's bigger than you. You can't break it. So that's how it started. But something really clicked with the cello. Like right away, it was easy for me. And I progressed very quickly. I don't know. I just sort of took to it. I didn't take to every instrument that way. And then what happened was, I didn't have a great childhood. I had a very, there's a lot of violence and other problems that sort of happened. And so music in a lot of ways became an escape for me. And particularly the cello. It was sort of like my own little private world of poetry. And I was always improvising and making up things. I didn't really, I always sort of thought of myself kind of like a jazz musician from the beginning. I learned all the classical pieces, but I would just sit there and make stories with, my dad's a writer and I love my dad a lot. He's really great. And I just wanted to be like him. But I had a cello. So I would read the books in his like sort of little library room. And then I would try to make stories with the cello that would tell those stories. And that became kind of weird when I went to Juilliard, which is a very sort of, for lack of a better word, string jock type place. Then I was like, I want to tell poems and stuff.
Right. They're
but
like
that's really
structured.
They're like, do your scales. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's a bad story. I don't want, like, C major scales are a pretty boring story, guys.
Right.
So, it's not surprising that in the end I became very attracted to the worlds of like singer-songwriter and hip-hop, just because obviously that love of words and that love of poetry and that real challenge. Like, I've always seen it like, is there a way I could tell instrumental stories that's as clear a narrative as, the narrative of words? So that's kind of how it all sort of began. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you're also a very talented pianist and have played piano on many other things. Did you have a piano in the home? Did you study that as well?
I did. And piano's been sort of a compositional instrument for me. I started putting out piano records when I was maybe 20, 19. And I've put out maybe 10 piano records through the Domo label. I really like doing piano music that's meditation based. So I do a lot of relaxation music, and that's really fun for me. I don't have the same virtuosity on the piano that I do on the cello. I did compete a lot as a kid, but cello sort of...
That's debatable.
Okay, yeah, I play piano on your record, so
you're incredible.
But I was more fascinated with the cello as sort of my own voice. But I do love playing the piano, and I do play it on tour. I did a lot of video game tours last year, which was fun, and I've been playing with Il Divo piano. But to me, the cello is like my singing voice. As you mentioned, when I was a little kid, I sang at the Metropolitan Opera and I did musical theater. And when my voice changed, I didn't, I was a boy soprano, as a little boy. When my voice changed, I wasn't particularly interested in doing it anymore. And in a funny way, I've always seen it like my singing voice sort of went into the cello. And I have sort of had a lifelong fascination with how that can all work together. That's a really fun space for me, for sure.
Yeah. Going into your career, you've worked with so many incredible artists, and I printed out the list here. It's just too many to say, but just to name some of the big ones: Paul Simon, Evanescence, Beyoncé, some of the biggest in the entire world: Talib Kweli, Frank Ocean, Chromeo, RJD2, Fall Out Boy, Coldplay. From classical to orchestra to rock, how do you approach the different styles, and what challenges arise when you switch between them?
Thanks, man. I kind of try not to think about genre. To get back to this idea of narrative and story, I think that genre is a kind of a destructive word because it almost makes you... It's kind of like every record that I'm on is like being an actor in a new movie. And in the same way as an actor taking on a new role, it's like if I'm in a record with Talib Kweli, it's not like, oh, I'm going to make this like some other role I did in another record that sounds like this. I feel like it's scary because you have to go through this kind of unknown space emotionally, but it's really powerful to be able to expand yourself into the narrative of an artist and to take pieces of genre, like, okay, this is sort of jazz influenced or blues influenced, but then kind of have that vulnerability to expand yourself. I worked a lot in the last couple of years with an artist called Lewis Capaldi. You guys probably know that hit. I've been getting kind of used to being someone you love. Lewis has this approach to heartbreak that is so profoundly poignant. And I really had to do a lot of work in my cello sound to think about where are the moments that I hold space empathically for this voice. When are the moments that I break like he's breaking, and how do those things work together? How can I make all that work together? So it is hard. You're right. Switching genres. I mean, like sometimes it's insane. Like I play in a classical Indian project called Akshara. There was a week in January where it was like Tuesday was a bluegrass show, Wednesday was a classical Indian show, Thursday was a Mozart concert. But I found that it's very powerful to really see it like I'm taking on a character, and how do I become that character? And that keeps you like really fresh on like everyone's project. And it also honors those artists, their unique vision. It's not saying like Smoking with Strangers, oh, that's just like emo this project. It's going, no. This is a unique project. Yeah. It may actually have nothing to do with anything else I've ever done.
Right.
And I want to expand me into the project, not reduce the project to something I've seen before. Yeah. When I explain this to music students, they look confused, and then I'll make this analogy. I'll go, wouldn't it be like acting in a film? And when you get your role, you just go like, oh, at film school, I learned how to be a cowboy, so I'll just do that cowboy thing I've done before.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, no, this is like its own story.
Yeah.
So for me, it goes back to story. I also have very specific physical warm-ups I do for different kinds of playing and stuff like that.
You know, I know that some guitarists have to change the string or tighten the strings or use a capo or something. Is it the same way with the cello? Do you have to tune it down or tune it in a certain way when you're doing different kinds of things? And then, what is your warm-up? What is your...
Thanks, man. I mean, it's not so much about tuning. It's more about gear. So like a mix and match gear for different situations, for sure. Warming up, I actually sort of usually do a mixture of like jazz, classical European music, and classical Indian music, because it kind of covers three very different bases. Mm-hmm. European has like a real strong kind of just physical, kinesthetic, technical piece. Jazz gets your harmony going, and then classical Indian music is probably the strongest around like flow and melodic construction. Then usually, this is going to sound funny, but like an actor, I'll like warm up in character for what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So like if what I'm walking into is a jazz thing, I might do all that normal warm up and then put on John Coltrane and play along with John Coltrane for 20 minutes mm-hmm. and really try, or Ella Fitzgerald or Sarah Vaughan, like really try to saturate my phrasing and sound into that world, almost like an actor practicing an accent, mm-hmm. like live in an English accent for like half an hour. And then it really changes what happens when I go into the session then, because I'm not spending 30 minutes trying to find my way into that vocabulary.
Yeah.
I've because I used to not warm up that way, and I would find that I would spend like a solid half hour getting to the heart of the matter. It would be fine. Like the artist would be happy, but I wouldn't really have my way deeply into like the heart of what they intended.
Yeah. And you and I have played together several times, and when I think of your warm-ups, I remember you in the hallway doing quick Bach runs. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, I do play a lot of Bach. Yeah, Bach does remain a very, very suited. Bach and concertos remain a very good warm-up routine for sure.
I've seen you perform on stage with no shoes on. Is that something you like to do? Is that a getaway? Tell us how and why you get comfortable on stage like that.
Oh my God. I've been wearing shoes a lot lately, so maybe that phase is over. I don't know. But maybe I'll go back to it just because you said that. I think for me, I felt very, as a young, I guess you said prodigy, like as a classical young entertainer, child entertainer, I felt very confined by a lot of the rituals of classical music. I felt unheard. I came from a family that really struggled socioeconomically and also had a lot of tension and problems. And so there was something for me about putting on a tuxedo and playing music in a very stoic way that, I mean, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, so I'll just say it. It just didn't feel honest. It didn't feel authentic. Right. It felt like I was hiding the reality of my childhood. And meanwhile, I was very interested listening wise in like 90s hip hop and grunge and art and contemporary classical music that had more rage, more anger. You know, I love artists like Eminem. Like I really, I felt other parts of myself. And so in a funny way, I think that my dressing down or barefoot or standing up and doing cello concertos. It's sort of two things. It's a little bit of rebellion. It's still that rebellious kid. It's also making the audience listen by bunking convention. There's something like if you walk out and you wear a tuxedo and you sit in the chair, often people in classical situations are having a socioeconomic experience. If I walk out and sometimes when I'm playing a classical concerto, I'll walk on stage, shake the conductor's hand, turn to the audience and be like, hey, everybody, how's it going? And the reason I do that is to get active listening going. I'm like, no, I'm a human here. We're not going to have a ritualistic classical experience. We're actually going to have an actual listening experience. Mm-hmm. So I think the barefoot was part of that whole idea for me of kind of like some of it conscious, some of it unconscious, of just ways that I could sort of create more reality in the stage space. Right now, I think it's more important than ever. I have a duo project with the clarinetist Tasha Warren, and we put out a record 2 years ago called Ourself Behind Ourself Concealed, which celebrates diversity narrative in classical music and really looks at stories that need to be told in classical music that aren't being told. And I'm really happy to say we got 2 Grammy nominations for that record, which
Congratulations.
was really crazy. And right now we're right in the middle of the second record. And the second record, we've only commissioned collaborations with composers that are mothers, and it looks at motherhood and being a professional musician. We just recorded a new composition that Nora Jones and her husband Pete Ram wrote for us, which we're really excited about their family and about being parents. And there is a real importance in the genre I come from of humanizing it. As you may have seen in the news, there's a lot of darkness around the New York Philharmonic and these spaces that have covered up very unacceptable behavior professionally. And so I think coming from a bizarrely orthodox world of classical music, myself and other artists like Laura St. John, whose work is really incredible, both musically and politically, I think that was that essential is to bring like the reality of narratives, the reality of stories. So that was a really deep answer to what was a very superficial question, but I might actually play barefoot tonight because you said that.
You should do it.
I'm going to do it.
I will say that, from an audience perspective, it is very memorable because we're like, yeah, that guy, he had no shoes on, or he laid down and played the cello. So it's memorable, and it comes across as fun, authentic, and you're a professional. He's been doing it so long he doesn't need to wear his shoes. I've known you a long time, and I've heard you talk a lot about your family, but I feel like you've really superseded that in your career. I don't see you as a guy that comes from that childhood trauma. I see you as a renowned professional, and you've managed to turn that into your strength and not your weakness, for sure. I think we share that. We have that in common, right? We come from families that, If you're just joining us, we're on the phone with world-renowned cellist Dave Eggar, and he talks about playing on the Coldplay song Viva la Vida, one of the biggest tracks in pop history. I wonder to myself, Dave, when you walk into a yogurt shop and you hear that playing, how do you feel?
I hear that playing all the time, and I love it. There's a kind of a funny story about my experience with that song, which is that it was kind of right at the point that I was starting to get into session work. Right out of Juilliard, I did a tour with the great jazz musician Michael Brecker, who was sort of my mentor. And then almost immediately after that, I was with Evanescence. So I kind of was in this whirlwind of touring and my own records. And I had recorded, but it wasn't really till after Viva La Vida that I got a lot more recording work. That and Breaking Benjamin, I did a song called Diary of Jane that brought a lot of work to the table. But so I was kind of really at the beginning of this phase where I was like layering cellos. What I do is I'll play a lot of cellos that'll then sound like an orchestra. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so this engineer that I knew had called me about a session on the 4th of July. And I had plans with my girlfriend at the time. So I was like, I don't think I want to do this session. And he couldn't tell me anything about it. He wouldn't tell me who the artist was. He wouldn't tell me how long it was. He was like, it might be 2 hours. Might be a week, depends how you do. And so finally I gave in, and my girlfriend was pretty upset, and I think we ended up breaking up because of this, to be honest. But I ended up going to this studio called The Magic Shop, which was in the East Village. It's no longer there. And I knocked on the door, and this fellow answered the door, and his name was Chris. He's like, "Hello, I'm Chris," and he looked really familiar, but I couldn't figure out who he was. And in my mind, I decided that Chris was a drummer in a Williamsburg hipster band. I just had this idea. So we ended up playing video games for a little while because there was no engineer there. I think we played like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty or something like that. Anyway, so then we went in and he finally wanted me to play a song. And when he played the song, what went through my head was, I can't believe that I blew off my 4th of July plans to work with this band that sounds exactly like Coldplay. And then I asked him, I was like, wow, that's great. What do you do in the band? Are you the drummer? And he goes, no, it's my band. I was like, what's the name of your band? He's like, Coldplay.
I've heard of you guys.
And I was like, oh, and then he loved that. And then we worked together for, he really did all the work, and he came up with all those awesome parts, and we explored, and there was a really cool gypsy violinist there as well, and layered and layered and layered. And what was originally supposed to be an orchestral piece ended up turning into this, through Chris Martin's brilliance, this incredible song. I have tremendous respect for him. He's a really wonderful musician.
Yeah.
And he's also a wonderful person.
And his vocals are very emotional, and that song, something very special happened with that, for sure. Yeah, and I'm glad to share it with the audience and then hear your perspective about it too. That's a fascinating story. Your work in film scoring has made a significant impact. You've done a lot of films. You worked with Amy Lee to create for a film. And how do you approach film scoring? And when it comes to using the cello as a central voice, do you prefer to use the cello over the piano?
Yeah, I mean, I really love working on film because it's really nice to sink your teeth into a longer project. A lot of the songs that I work on, it's like, they're very fast turnaround. We just did like my team just did like a song for the credit music for Love is Blind. It was like a 5-hour turnaround. I'm working with Ed Sheeran, like very fast turnaround.
Wow.
So one thing that's really nice about film is that you really get to sink your teeth into a story for a number of months. And Amy Lee from Evanescence and Chuck Palmer and myself have been a writing team for a number of films. We did Blind, which has Alec Baldwin and Demi Moore. We did War Story with Catherine Keener. I personally had a kind of a big film victory this year with a film that is become pretty iconic called Terrifier 3, which is now the top grossing unrated film of all time, it's a Santa Claus slasher film.
Yeah.
And I got to do snarky Christmas songs for it because I was scoring my friend Phil Anastasia's amazing horror series, and he was a music supervisor for Terrifier. I love film because it's the ultimate in storytelling, and I feel like it lets me expand so much as a cellist because it isn't necessarily conforming to the rules of pop music. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to go verse, chorus, bridge, like I can really expand and try new things. It's a little hard because everything happens very fast, and because I am the orchestra, because I'm making a lot of layers. Film, and especially my work, I work a lot with this incredible film composer that we're all going to be hearing about called Jessica Rose Weiss. She's so amazing. And composers like Jessica really challenge me because I have to transcribe content really fast. My understanding of harmony and counterpoint has to be really strong. No one's giving me sheet music, so I have to really hear the music and immediately learn it. When COVID started and I became really, really busy with remote recording, for a while, this was really hard for me. Like I was it would take me a really long time to take a cue that was like, yum ba da dum bumpy, yada da dum ba yada da, and like by ear figure out all the parts. But through the fact that, like all of us in music, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were struggling socioeconomically. I was like, I just have to figure this skill out. I have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I was really proud of myself that I worked pretty hard to learn to be better and better at transcribing. Yeah. And now a cue that Jessica sends me a cue that might originally have taken me like 30 minutes, I can do in about 5 to 7 minutes in terms of just the transcription of it. So I really love film. I really would love to do more film. I think it really is a passion of mine. And and I just love the story. I love the cello in film. I love working with directors. It's really cool to like I feel like in many ways I'm a kind of like a chameleon as a player. And so having a strong voice that leads me is always something I really
Yeah.
enjoy a lot.
Does the scene dictate the music? Do you look at a scene and say that has dark overtones or undertones?
Wow, man. You just said it so well. I feel like usually the scene does dictate it. When I started out in film scoring, I wrote down stuff more than I do now.
Hmm.
I stopped doing that because directors usually don't read music. And even, so it started to become a barrier. You know what I mean? It's like I want to work with the director and he's just sort of turning the scene into a shape. And it was almost better to just mess around at the keyboard with the director than to like bring a bunch of dots. It's like okay, now we're going to speak French, but you don't speak French.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
like it doesn't help. It doesn't help the situation. Um, I feel like it's really important when you're starting to score a scene to create a really clear like topology, like or topography, like sort of the ups and downs, the hills and valleys. Have a really clear sense of it. For me, I really like to work macro to micro, like instead. And
Yeah.
I work a lot with this awesome film composer, Patrick Cannell. This guy's
Mhm.
so talented. You should check out his work, Patrick
Yeah.
Cannell. He and I work very similarly, and it's really funny because when I see him, he does exactly what I do. I'm thinking about I I, I orchestrated Jimmy Fallon's Christmas record that just came out, and
Oh,
we
wow.
did this one Frank Sinatra type ballad, and I did exactly what Patrick does. I'm listening to the song and I'm going, already,
Right.
already,
Right.
na na na. Nah, 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 nah,
Right.
nah. It's like, and
Right.
I feel like a complete moron. And
Right.
then from that ridiculousness, I go, no, 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 C minor seven. No, no, that could be like do, 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 do. I like,
Sure. Big
for
picture to
me,
small picture.
I have to do it that way.
Yeah.
I don't work micro to macro does not work well for me. I started my recording career in hip hop, and I have to have like I have for me, and this is both a strength and a weakness. I have to have a picture of what I'm painting to paint it.
Right.
I really love the macro to micro thing, and in film, that's kind of how I work for
Now
sure.
you
So
work. Yeah. I feel the same way. I've done the other way as far as like starting a song with just a little melody. But I feel like if I name the album, it's easier for me to write the songs to the name of the album. Because
yeah,
now we've got a picture of where these songs need to go, a destination, I guess you could say. Dave, you work with so many artists, and so I don't know how you can answer this question, but what's one memory that stands out to you and you feel is transformative to your career?
from working with artists.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, was it Evanescence? Was it Foreigner? I mean, you traveled with Foreigner, and it wasn't just this guy sitting in the background. It was called Foreigner and the Dave Eggar Orchestra. I mean, you've done some of the biggest things, and you've just worked with too many. I mean, Tony Bennett, Taylor Swift. I mean, just every person you could think of, you've somehow been on their record nearby. And what was transformative in your career that you said, "Oh my God, I'll never be the same," or "I'll never work the same way again"? And also, what was a memory that felt good? Maybe they're the same, or maybe they're different.
I have two. I have two um, moments that stick out. It's so hard because there's just so many.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so hard to unpack. I mean,
yeah,
even while you were saying that, I was thinking about, 2016 when I took a tour of the Sydney Opera House and was like, I'm never going to play here. And then the next year I was opening for Evanescence and playing with Evanescence there,
yeah, yeah,
and then the next year I was soloing with Foreigner there.
yeah.
So, I
And
mean,
then, I
there's
mean,
like,
all the small things too. I mean, Kelly Clarkson, the Pope.
oh, that's
I
it.
mean,
The
unbelievable.
Pope.
I mean,
So,
stuff
I
that you've
mean,
done.
but two moments that actually, if I think about them as internal moments that were powerful, I would say that two moments that really stand out would be one was a long time ago, but it was a seminal moment in a lot of ways. I was playing on tour with Michael Brecker. We were doing a residency at the Tokyo Blue Note, and there was Michael Brecker was sort of after John Coltrane, probably one of the most important tenor saxophone players, and he was sort of my jazz mentor in a lot of ways. And I was very young, and really didn't deserve that gig. I wasn't good enough, but I did it anyway, and I really worked hard to do a good job. And I just remember one night he played this solo version of John Coltrane's Naima that he does, and I guess he did it a lot, but I had never heard it. And I just remember in that moment going like, I'm never going to be this great, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be this great.
That's a really emotional thing, man.
And then I think, he died a couple of years later. And my first Grammy nomination for my own record was actually a tribute track to Mike that I did with Gil Goldstein. So that was very meaningful for me. Sorry I got emotional about that.
That is emotional. It's a beautiful story.
And then another moment that's kind of simple, but it really just sticks out was playing the Hollywood Bowl with Philip Phillips on the John Mayer tour. And the encore was just me and Philip playing this song, My Boy, that I loved so much and I think that, again, like, it's so funny how these personal moments are for us as artists. It's like, it's always these internal things. I think the fact that that's a song about sort of comforting your inner child, or it's sort of almost a song about, inner child recovery, and me doing it for 20,000 people in this very intimate way with one of my best friends was kind of also, I think, a moment that was very, very special. I just felt extremely seen, and to the point I made earlier about classical music and just not not feeling heard as a Prodigy, like that moment of having 20,000 people see the two of us just play this song about sort of honesty and finding your broken self and sort of healing that. I don't know, that was very powerful for me. That was like a very important moment, even though it might not be as epic as some other moments. So that's pretty damn epic. I don't know.
Yeah. What are some of the most challenging things that you did that in the end you're like, I'm so glad that was difficult and it was a hard project, but it was rewarding?
Thank you. There's always so much that's scary in music. I mean, you have to go to places you've never been.
Traveling.
Traveled. I remember one time I traveled to Thailand and played a concerto, like a solo with orchestra on a cello that wasn't mine. No one spoke English. They didn't even seem very friendly. And then in the end, it was really good. I think music is constantly facing challenge. There's so much challenge that we face, like new pieces, difficult repertoire, new artists. Like always when you sort of start touring with a new artist, those first couple days are scary, where you're like,
sure, getting to know each other.
Will they like me? Like, am I the right person? I feel like there's a huge part of being an artist, and I'm interested in what you think about this too, but your dialogue with doubt is always hard for me and every artist. I think that, no matter how much, now I have a bunch of Grammy nominations, but still it's like, even about, the show I'm doing tonight, I'll be like, am I really cool enough to be in this show? Or am I really good enough to be learning to die? And I do a lot of martial art. I've been training karate for years and years. And then the last 4 years I've been training like K1 style, like kickboxing fighting with Len Cook at Champion Striking. And I feel like that mental strength thing is so important in music, because to your point about challenging, it's like, there's all sorts of challenges. I'm constantly thrown into situations where it's like sink or swim. There's sort of a fantasy that music students have that when they get on those big records, they're going to have all this time to learn the song and, put their best foot forward. So much of the time it's like I'm thinking of a session I had last week with a major pop star. It was in a huge studio, and literally I just, sat in the waiting room for a while, and then they're like, okay, your time is up. They just throw me in front of a mic. I don't get to hear the song. They're like, ready, play.
And
so there's so many and you're just like, yeah. But there's so many situations like that require like a really high level of like inner toughness. And so I use the martial arts training for that. But I always think that the challenges are worth it. Like even sometimes, I'll be in the middle of something and I'll be mad at myself. Like, why in the world did I agree to do this? Like, I don't want to do this, Yeah. And then, but almost always, Jay, I come out the other side and I'm proud to have taken a chance on myself and proud to have learned something, meaningful and have a new skill. And I feel like it also helps us grow beyond the limitations of who we see ourselves as, which I think is also very important. So
Yeah. I love what you said about the conversations of self-doubt. It's so true. There's a balance of and I feel like that self-doubt also forces you to work harder. It makes you say, I can do this. I know I can. I've done better. Yeah, just fascinating. And I love to hear your perspective on that because you've just done so much more.
it also never, Jay, it also never changes. Like, I think part of the reason I worked so hard as a prodigy and stuff was because I thought I would wake up some morning and be like, I'm perfect. I can play anything.
Right.
But the problem is that the more that you learn about music, the more that you hear. Like, if I was 18-year-old me meeting me as a cellist now, I would probably think like, oh my God, that guy has it all. But now I see more. So if I'm taking a jazz solo, I'm like, oh, that's good, but I also want this.
Right.
So, it's like one of the things I think about a lot is like you could take a piece like a Mozart piece and you could think like, what did you hear in it when you were 8? Mm-hmm. Well, you could do this with anything. You could do this with, a pop song. Like, what did you hear in it when you were 8? What did you hear in it when you were 16, 20, 25, 30, 35? One of my favorite classical teachers said to me once, he said, the interpretation you have of a piece is really not one performance. It's really when you met the piece until you die is your interpretation of the piece. That was very beautiful.
That is
like
very
quantum, he's like quantum mechanics. He's like, any performance is just the surface of the glacier of your relationship to this work. And it's a beautiful, beautiful way of thinking about it, I think. Yeah.
It seems like versatility and ability to adapt is part of your growth. And then that growth is what makes you the professional that you are.
Oh, thanks.
What would you say? No, you're fantastic. I have a personal memory of being a DJ, and a friend of mine opened a little hip hop club in Brooklyn called Sputnik, and he said, "Come and DJ," and I was just a young fledgling DJ at the time, but I was like, "Let's play some hip hop inspired chill out music." And then you walked in the bar with, I think it was Lucia Micarelli and maybe Josh Groban.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it was actually. Yeah.
And Lucia was like, hey, this guy plays really great cello. And I'm like, yeah, I know Dave. And you came up there and you whipped out your cello. And next thing we know, everyone's turned around in their seats looking at this cello DJ duo. And we weren't a thing, but we became a thing after that.
Yeah, we made some awesome music, bro. I love your musical sensibility, and I really have this really deep love of like electronica. I always have, and I think that just music that combines acoustic and electronica is just I just love it so much, and and we're overdue for a show together.
I know we have to do it. We've got to do it. We'll talk about that here. For a young guy like me coming from New Orleans, just being, I felt like a superstar. I'm like, man, these people who are well-known musicians just walked in and wanted to play on top of my stuff. I just didn't know how to take that, and it's been a great 20-year relationship with you since then.
They're so wild. That's crazy.
I know.
Feels like it's so funny how it feels like yesterday, and
it really does.
It feels like yesterday, and then it feels like another era. It's crazy. Like, I've been back in New York a lot lately, and it's so funny when you walk around different neighborhoods of New York, you'll just have these flash memories of things like Sputnik. I'll turn a corner and I'll remember like a specific gig or a specific relationship I was in or something, and like there's something like just so cool about New York that way. And it's so funny because that Sputnik thing feels like yesterday, and yet if I really pack it, there's like massive amounts of life chapters that happen in between
after that. Yeah, a couple more questions and I'll let you go. I know you got some stuff to do this morning. The music industry itself has changed a lot in years, and I'm sure you've watched it evolve, especially when it comes to streaming and digital platforms. How do you see the role of musicians evolving in the future?
I think we need more music community. I think we've been kind of polluted by the industry into this every man, woman for themselves thing. And sort of as a result, the music industry has fractured musical community. It's true. Like when I was on tour with Foreigner, there was a aha moment where Mick Jones said to me something about, he just made me realize how much money used to be made in the music industry. Like they were like, oh yeah, Foreigner 4 sold 90 million records. At 90 million records at $20 a record is almost $1 billion.
Yeah.
So music was an industry that brought in a lot of cash. none of us ever experienced that. By the time we were young musicians, I mean, playing with Evanescence, she was one of the very last artists to sell maybe like 40 million records, So I got to experience like the very, very tiny tail end of it. But, pretty much we came up in the Napster era. I mean, we did. We came up in the time where music was kind of just still selling. I remember record stores kind of. And then it was like straight on into like everything's free. So,
it's free.
So now that we're, rather than musicians scrambling to sort of outdo each other, I would love to see music move towards more community-based thinking. The way that the podcast world is working is a lot healthier than the music world. If you take these really great podcasts like Crime Junkies, I love this podcast, Crime Junkies. Crime Junkies is selling out theaters that are like that Rihanna can't sell out. Because the business model of the way that they built their community and their fan base is just healthier. And they so I think that artists looking at their fans like real people and really letting them in and seeing each other as compatriots in this journey, not like competitors, will change a lot of how people value music. If everybody just gives away music, for free, like rats leaving a sinking ship, and everybody's sort of snarky and undercutting each other, how can we expect the world to trust what we do? If we came with a platform that was more ethical and a way of doing business that was like more like, worthy in ourselves, I think it's going to build a new model. We don't know what that model looks like yet. And it probably won't be like 170 million record sales. But it might actually result in a much healthier musical middle class, which I'm interested in being a part of creating, of people who have more self-respect, feel like reasonable goals are something that are attainable and meaningful. We don't all have to be Taylor Swift.
Right.
It's always been amazing to me when I talk to booking agents and I'll say like, I would like to be able to sell out 500-seat theaters nationwide. Here's 20 cities where I can do that. And they're like, well, this doesn't matter unless you're doing 10,000 seaters. I'm like, I'm a cellist.
Yeah.
Can you actually help? I made an analogy the other day where I was like, this is almost like going to a financial planner with $500,000. And they're like, come back when you have 40 million. Like, what's the point? And I'm like, well, I don't care about the person with 40 million. I'm trying to develop my career.
I'm trying to do my thing. Yeah.
You help me develop my career. You'll also make some money.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we're going to do it, but it's one of the reasons that I work really hard in my life to support my friends as artists. Yeah. Because I feel very lucky and I feel like I have incredible friends and like they're so talented, but some of them are like broke.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to one friend of mine. This person made a really sad life choice recently based on how broke they are as an artist. Arguably one of the most talented songwriters I know, hands down. And I was so broken afterwards. I was like, wow, this is so pathetic in our industry that somebody who's this brilliant is scraping by so much that they feel this unworthy in life. And so I really feel like it needs to start with us as a community of musicians having a higher sense of value in ourselves, supporting each other. And this was a very philosophical response to a question you probably wanted a business answer to.
No, I love it. I think you're right, and in the years that I've known you, I've seen you personally lift up many band, including myself, Jake Bain. You have been there for lots of artists, and they've grown under your advice and wing. Which brings me to my next question: what advice would you give a young cellist or a musician aspiring to forge their own path in the industry?
First of all, be 100% authentic. There is no such thing as selling out. Selling out is a delusion. It propagates the idea that you pretending to be someone else will make people like you more than you being yourself. Imagine if you did that in your romantic life, what a disaster would happen. So first of all, start with authenticity. Don't be afraid to ask your heroes for help. I mean, I've learned in the last few years that the worst thing that can happen is somebody can say no or just not get back to you. But there's so many beautiful collaborations that have happened just by the courage for me to just with my hand shaking, like type a message to Paquito de Rivera, one of my lifetime heroes, to ask him to write for my record. And then he did for like next to no money. And then he came on tour with us. I was like, oh my God, I've loved this guy's music since I was like a little kid. This is so insane. So don't be afraid to ask for help and reach out. And for cellists, I would just say, listen to like everything. Like listen to every day in the car. I'll just like put, I'll be like music from the Congo. There's all these playlists that are really cool. You could be like music from Ethiopia from like 1960s, and just like boot camp that, and then just see what you take from it. Like always be in an active listening mode, collecting new and fresh ideas and like and stuff like that. So that would be my advice. And if you go dark, build a really strong friend base. We all really need support as artists. Like it doesn't matter how successful you get, you're still going to doubt, and you're still going to feel alone, and you're still going to feel unheard. So that's a big thing with my fight team and stuff, my martial arts fight team. Like we just support each other so much, and it means so much when you have to, step out on that stage by yourself, doing a song you barely know, and just hoping anyone will like you.
Yeah. I love that for you, that you have both remained humble in the light of everything that you've done, but also found an outlet, a way to build your own community in the karate and in your martial arts, and it also keeps you healthy enough to want that for the industry that you're in. You're a trendsetter, and I really hope that the industry can learn some tips and follow in your path. And also another thing I just want to say about artists is like, have your own opinions. Don't just be like blinded by the industry. Like I understand the point of strata, like for sure, if a A-list signed artist comes in, like I understand that there's a deadline. I understand that when there's more money, my file delivery has to be on point and more and stuff like that. But Jay, like that doesn't mean, like, I know what I think about the artists in my life. Like, and I think the point is like, have the opinions you have. Some of my best friends, I work with a lot of worship singers that are some of the best singers I know. Some of those people are probably going to be parents and not have a career. It doesn't mean my opinion of them is less than Dua Lipa because Dua Lipa is Dua Lipa. Mm-hmm. Have pride in your own opinions, make smart business choices, but have an aesthetic of your own, and like value what you value in terms of the ethical bottom line of who you are as an artist and like what you think. Yeah.
And that will keep you humble, because listen, man, there's a lot of amazing, especially when you cross over into like the worship world and stuff. You see like musicians who are not professionals that'll really humble you fast.
Yeah.
Singing wise, especially.
Yeah.
In the gospel community, especially, you'll just be like, wow, this person's like teaching science in a school, and then they come in and do that. Whoa. Okay. Better get back to the practice room,
Yeah.
So, anyway.
If you're just joining us, we're here with world-renowned cellist and pianist Dave Eggar, and he sat down for a transparent and beautiful and emotional conversation. As I like to do with every interview, I'd like to know, what 3 records would you take with you on a desert island? It doesn't have to be a desert island, but if you could only have 3 records, what would they be?
Gosh, I thought about this a lot, and it's really tough. It's so hard because I like to listen to so many things that I'm just like, gosh, like what would I take with me? But I guess it would be Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. John Coltrane, Love Supreme.
Oh yeah.
And Nas, New York State of Mind.
Hey, all right. Yeah, that's a wide variety.
I think that would keep me pretty happy.
That would keep you happy.
That would keep, because I got my Coltrane for like my sort of chill out zones thing.
Yeah.
And then I got like my classical kind of edgy thing. And then I got to have some kind of hip hop thing.
Gotta have some New York hip hop. Yeah.
One of the best hip hop records of all time. So I'd have to like probably take that one.
What are you working on?
But I will say that Eminem was a pretty close runner-up on that.
What an incredible artist! I've watched Eminem grow, from the very first thing to now. I mean,
oh my God,
incredible artist! Probably the best lyricist in the world. What are you working on right now?
Thanks, man. So yeah, quite a lot of things. I have a bluegrass band called Bristol Lightning. So we're doing a lot of touring this year, and we're actually just starting up. We have some really exciting dates with Symphony this summer. So we're presenting a Celtic show with Bristol Lightning and Pat Mangan from Riverdance, and the Symphony of the Mountains. So we were hard at work making arrangements for that. Next year I will be back on the road with Foreigner's Symphonic Tour.
Yeah.
So we're just making plans for that. I'm so excited to be back with them. And I work very closely with this sort of, I would call it the world's best hit songwriting team, TMS. And I'm constantly in motion with them. Sam Romans, the incredible songwriter that wrote "I've Been Getting Kind of Used to Being Someone You Love."
Yeah.
He's honored me by bringing me on many, many projects. And so we're busy at work with artists y'all have heard of, like BB Rexa, but then like brand new artists that you'll be hearing about soon. And just wanting to fill my days with music, man, just trying to fill every day. I feel like, it took me a long time in my career to just get to the place of, just really being joyful in the music making of today.
Yeah.
Whatever today looks like. And I think that might be, in a way, the biggest sort of door to success in music is to build enough of a foundation in your career to be able to just be present with the music that you actually are doing. And then I'm working on a new record of my own. Like, I'll have a new piano record out this year. And I'm working on a collaboration with Jay Sustain that he doesn't know about because I missed it. So I bet we're going to make a Blue Massive Redux record.
Yeah, I was going through some Blue Massive files the other day, and I'm like, there was probably 6 or 7 songs that just didn't get finished. I'm like, that's the bedrock for a new album for sure. As a radio personality, I look at you and I'm just so impressed, and I'm like, this guy has played with everybody, and we've talked about it, and we've gone through all the accolades. But as a friend and someone that's known you a while, I look up to you. I'm very proud of you, and just congratulations on all the success, and to many, many more. And we want to get you here to Dallas. We're introducing you to the audience of KNON. KNON's been broadcasting on 89.3 FM for 42 years now, and it's listener-supported radio, no government grants. We've done it raw out here in Dallas, so we want to get you here. And and then of course Jay Sustain would love to work with you again. I'll tell him.
Yeah, can you talk to his people and get back to me? That'd be great. Thanks. I know it's hard. Like, there's a lot of firewall there, but like we can work through it.
Thanks again, Dave Eggar, for giving us this 1 hour of just raw, emotional interview, and we love it very much, and we hope to see you very soon.
Thank you, my bro. We'll talk soon, Jay. All right, man. Bye, buddy.